When Rob Reiner died, the grief didn't end at the funeral. It silently spread, revealing layers of emotion deeper than mere loss. When his final will was revealed, Roy and Jake could hardly believe their eyes. Rob had decided to donate his entire vast fortune, worth $200 million, the result of decades of dedication, success, and artistic legacy, entirely to charity. In that moment, their sorrow quickly transformed into something else, being excluded from their own story, losing their right to inherit a portion of a legacy they had once considered certain. Shock mingled with anger, and in their eyes, Rob was not just a father, but a symbol of decisions beyond imagination. According to multiple sources, Jake was nearly unable to control his emotions. He publicly stated that his parents had made a choice that put the family before everything else. Calls to lawyers quickly ensued, paving the way for a tense legal battle. And for the first time, the Reiner family's private world began to be scrutinized in the public light. As the trial began, layers of truth were gradually peeled back. Each new revelation made the story more complex, no longer simply a matter of inheritance, but a clash of grief, expectations, and a feeling of being left behind. Nearly 2 weeks after the heartbreaking tragedy of December 14, 2025, when Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner were found dead in their Brentwood home, the family was finally able to hold a quiet and private farewell. After the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office of Death completed the necessary procedures, the couple's remains were returned to their family. Public records show that, as of December 19th, their eldest son, Jake Reiner, was officially listed as the informant on both death certificates and as the recipient of his parents' ashes. Documents from the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health confirm that Rob and Michelle Reiner were cremated at Mount Sinai Funeral Home, a dignified location with deep significance for the Jewish community and the final resting place of many respected Hollywood figures. All procedures were carried out quickly, in accordance with Jewish tradition, which values early burial, in complete privacy and with utmost respect. In the days that followed, Romy and Jake Reiner chose to face their grief quietly. There was no media attention, no curious crowds, just a small circle of loved ones. In a gesture of great significance, Rob and Michelle's ashes were brought back to Jake's home, as a way for the children to keep their parents close during the darkest days of their mourning. According to those close to the family, no final decision had been made regarding their final resting place. Some suggested the ashes might be scattered at a special location or partially interred in the family plot, but all were being considered carefully and in silence. But the silence didn't last long. Soon after, cameras from major media outlets like ABC News, Fox News, and NBC appeared, capturing Romy and Jake Reiner entering a prestigious law office in Beverly Hills, a place often handling complex inheritance disputes in Hollywood's elite circles. Dressed in dark clothing and sunglasses, their faces showed weariness and grief. Neither spoke a word. Photographers pressed for answers, but the two siblings walked in silence, their eyes heavy with sadness. The image quickly spread online, accompanied by sensational headlines about the $200 million inheritance battle. That alone was enough to spark speculation. The public repeatedly questioned, why did the siblings go to see a lawyer so early, before any official announcement about the distribution of assets, or even before the will was officially announced? Romy stood silently, her gaze fixed, while Jake walked ahead, almost shielding and protecting his sister from the flashing lights. Questions about inheritance and estate management arose, but were entirely separate from the profound grief the siblings were still experiencing, less than 2 weeks after their parents' death. And just when the public thought the story had reached its emotional peak, a new piece of news was revealed like a silent bomb. Rob Reiner had long planned, little known to the public, that his entire $200 million estate had been redirected to charitable foundations. This decision wasn't born of coldness or coercion. It reflected a deep-seated philosophy he had pursued for years. Every child needs to be independent, find their own way, and learn to take responsibility. According to a longtime family friend, Rob believed that too much inherited wealth could inadvertently imprison or weaken a person. He once emphasized that Jake, Romy, and Nick needed to forge their own paths, face challenges, and learn the value of hard work, effort, and responsibility. For Rob, giving his children a large inheritance when they weren't emotionally or practically ready was like adding fuel to the fire. It wouldn't make them stronger, but could hinder their growth. The two siblings, Jake and Romy, despite their different personalities, both had to confront their parents' legacy in their own ways, as both a responsibility and a challenge, and also a lesson in growing up from life. Rob Reiner saw something very different in his children: the independence he always cherished, the strength to stand on their own 2 feet without depending on anyone. Jake had built a stable position for himself in his career and personal life. Romy was passionate about creative projects, gradually forging her own path. For Rob, both had proven that they didn't need inheritance to affirm their worth or success. He once joked, "My children can take care of themselves. They are much stronger than many people think." For Rob, success wasn't measured by the amount of money parents left behind, but by the ability to continue living purposefully, learning to be responsible, and growing. Therefore, long before his death, he decided that the majority of his $200 million fortune would go to charitable foundations, organizations he and Michelle had supported for many years, focused on education, healthcare, and social programs. Rob believed that too much inherited wealth could inadvertently weaken the next generation. Money should be a tool for contributing to society, not a comfort charm that prevents children from facing challenges on their own. According to a close source, he tasked Romy with managing the sale of the Brentwood house and other assets, with all proceeds going directly to carefully selected charities. A close family friend recalled a nearly prophetic conversation. Parents don't live to pave the way for their children, but to teach them how to walk their own path. Rob believed that, even if children felt hurt or betrayed at first, they would one day understand. However, that belief, however noble, became complicated when tragedy struck. Even though Nick wasn't directly involved in the inheritance, Jake and Romy still faced mixed emotions. According to sources close to the family, they experienced a tense moment at the Beverly Hills law office. Grief turned into resistance, a feeling of abandonment mixed with the compassion they had been taught. The two brothers weren't angry about their parents' charitable legacy. They were angry at feeling excluded from the family story, forced to seek justice and understand their own rights. Immediately, they assembled a team of lawyers specializing in Hollywood inheritance, preparing to take legal steps, from examining the fiduciary structure to potential clauses, to ensure they could protect what rightfully belonged to TH. Daniel Kraus, known for his ability to overturn firm decisions, along with Evelyn Hartman, an expert in philanthropy and asset management, met with Jake and Romy in a tense, private setting. According to sources, Kraus bluntly warned, "If you want justice, this is going to be a long and very difficult fight." Jake didn't hesitate. "We're not afraid. We've lost everything." Those words, according to witnesses, resonated like a verdict from the heart, a mixture of determination and pain, propelling the legal plan that was about to be implemented. Their goal was clear: to challenge the charities and foundations Rob and Michelle had chosen, arguing that they were unjustly deprived of their legitimate connection to their parents' legacy. In their private exchanges, the brothers' intentions became clear. They wanted more than just a share. They wanted everything returned, as a way to restore the broken family bond. Romy, quieter but equally determined, once said, "I don't want just a part of it. It's gone, and we have nothing left." Lawyers warned that going against public charities could provoke a strong reaction and damage their parents' reputations. But Jake remained steadfast. "That's not my family." Those words encapsulated the emotional storm tearing apart the Reiner family, a struggle between principle and pain, between loyalty and feelings of abandonment. Their legal team began gathering all possible evidence: personal diaries, old emails, notes from Rob's private accounts, all to prove that his final choices might not have fully reflected his true emotional state. According to sources, Kraus stressed, This wasn't just a lawsuit about money. This is a struggle to redefine parental legacy, where love, pain, and resentment clash in the human heart. The very values Rob Reiner preached, independence, responsibility, and self-reliance, now become the source of rebellion. For Jake and Romy, it's no longer a lesson or philosophy. It's the pain of never having the chance to ask, why does it have to be this way, before it's too late? Outwardly, the world continues to celebrate Rob as a symbol of compassion and social responsibility. Inwardly, his family is silently falling apart, precisely because of the ideals he lived and taught. A close family friend sadly shared, Rob always believed, his children will understand, but he passed away before he heard them say they weren't ready. And this is the story of Rob Reiner and Michelle, about how their will became more than just a financial matter or dispute. It reflects love, legacy, and loss, and serves as a reminder that even the most generous people can leave wounds, but their legacy can still heal. For decades, Rob and Michelle were admired as one of Hollywood's most dedicated couples. Their passion for helping others shaped their entire lives, from advocating for children's education, promoting equality and human rights, to building programs with lasting impact. One of their most notable creations was the nonprofit I Am Your Child, a revolutionary project focused on the critical developmental stage from birth to age 3. Thanks to the involvement of celebrities like Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey, the project reached millions of families across the United States, changing how a generation of parents understood early learning and children's emotional development. Building on that success, Rob went even further with Parents Action for Children, an advocacy organization that applies neuroscience and child psychology to community policy. His vision was incredibly bold: to encourage California legislators to invest in young children and support low-income families. Michelle, quietly behind the scenes, connected donors, legislators, and experts to ensure every part of the plan was perfect down to the smallest detail. One of their most significant milestones was Proposal 10, a campaign led by Rob, imposing a small tax on tobacco products to raise funds for First 5 California, an initiative focused on healthcare, education, and holistic development for children under 5. Thanks to their efforts, billions of dollars have been invested in helping children develop holistically, a prime example of genuine advocacy and social change. Rob didn't stop there. He also co-founded the American for Marriage Equality organization, contributing to the challenge of restrictive marriage laws in California. This struggle ultimately led to a historic 2015 Supreme Court ruling, affirming marriage equality as law nationwide. Rob and Michelle Reiner's legacy lies not only in their films and fame, but also in the profound changes they brought about for millions of children and communities across the country, a testament to their compassion and timeless vision. While Rob Reiner is often the prominent public face, Michelle Reiner is the quiet strategist behind the scenes. She coordinates press relations, mobilizes artists, and ensures that each charitable campaign is carried out with dedication and meticulous attention to detail. Outside of their own organizations, the couple consistently contributes to countless social programs, from public education and mental health to medical initiatives that help others rebuild their lives after hardship. Most of these efforts are quiet and go unnoticed, as Rob firmly believes that genuine charity needs no applause. Even through film, he seeks to integrate art with social activism. Rob's films carry profound messages about humanity and compassion, and are often used as fundraising opportunities for communities, from children's education to civil rights. Michelle, in her role as producer, is the perfect partner, transforming creativity and compassion into a seamless and effective mission. Few know that Rob and Michelle are also directly involved in community advisory boards, particularly those for child development and early childhood education programs in California. They don't just lend their names, but also invest their time, effort, and intellect to create real change. Rob and Michelle attend classes and meetings, meticulously reviewing reports and budgets to ensure every penny is used appropriately. Over the years, the couple has also contributed millions of dollars to political activities and fundraising events, supporting candidates such as Al Gore, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden. At one point, Rob considered running for governor of California, but ultimately decided that his mission lay not in politics, but in social activism and storytelling. Family and principles have always come first over personal ambition. Rob isn't afraid to stand up for his positions on national issues, co-founding an independent commission in 2017 to monitor election matters. In all of these endeavors, Michelle has been by his side, frequently collaborating on documentaries and socially impactful projects. Their impact is measured not only in dollars, but in real change. Millions of children gain access to better early education. Countless couples are recognized for equal rights, and many progressive ideas have a stronger voice in Hollywood and in society at large. So when news broke that Rob planned to donate almost his entire fortune to charity, those who knew him weren't surprised. It was perfectly consistent with the life he had lived, a life of generosity, not just for the sake of luxury, but for a long-term purpose and genuine meaning. But this also raises another question. How did Rob Reiner manage to build such a large legacy from such a young age? The story of Rob Reiner is a lifelong journey of unwavering dedication to entertainment and storytelling. It all began with acting, particularly his breakthrough role in the classic television series All in the Family, where Rob became a household name and laid the foundation for a legendary career. But Rob's true legacy doesn't lie in the spotlight. It stems from the quiet work behind the camera. As a director and producer, he created timeless films: When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, Stand By Me. These weren't just cultural masterpieces, they were box office goldmines. At the peak of his career, Rob was paid millions of dollars per film as a director, plus profits from box office revenue, and equity continued to generate income for years after the films left theaters. The combination of creativity and business acumen transformed Rob from a renowned actor into one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. This also formed the foundation of his vast fortune, which later became central to inheritance disputes. A major turning point in his financial journey came with co-founding Castle Rock Entertainment in 1987. The company quickly became a Hollywood powerhouse, producing legendary works such as Seinfeld and The Shawshank Redemption. When Castle Rock was restructured and sold in the early 1990s, Rob earned a substantial sum from his ownership stake, marking a significant step in his career and personal wealth. Beyond film, Rob also made shrewd investments in real estate throughout Los Angeles. In 1991, he purchased the Brentwood Mansion for $4.75 million. Now estimated at $10 to $13.5 million. The Malibu beachfront villa he bought in the 1990s for $4 million is now valued at $20 million and can be rented out for up to $150,000 a month. Over time, his investment portfolio has multiplied exponentially, ensuring long-term financial stability. But Rob's income isn't solely based on real estate. His classic films continue to generate annual profits through broadcasts, streaming, and royalties. One of his proudest achievements in his later years was settling the copyright dispute over This Is Spinal Tap, allowing Rob and his co-creators to regain creative and financial control, a symbolic victory that further solidified his long-term income. Even outside the entertainment world, Rob Reiner manages his finances with utmost care. He maintains a diversified portfolio, balanced between stocks and stable assets. These investments aren't his primary source of wealth, but they provide stability, especially during periods when Rob takes a break from directing. What few realize is that Michelle Singer Reiner, his lifelong partner, is also deeply involved in financial management and strategy. She's not just a partner in love, but also a valuable collaborator, co-producing films, advising on projects, and guiding crucial decisions. Thanks to her, the family is protected from the financial pitfalls that often engulf Hollywood stars. Each piece, from All in the Family, Castle Rock Entertainment, blockbuster films, lifetime royalties, to prime real estate in Brentwood and Malibu, contributes to an empire estimated to be worth around $200 million. But ironically, that very good fortune also brought heartbreaking consequences. When Rob's will was revealed, the world was shocked. His entire fortune, the result of over 50 years of creation and labor, had been dedicated to charities and philanthropic activities he believed in, instead of to his children. To the world, it was a noble, selfless act. But to his children, it was a feeling of abandonment, a maximum distance in their father's final days. Many questions remain unanswered. Did Rob believe that teaching his children independence by leaving nothing material was true love? Or was it a decision made in loneliness and emotional separation? Can wealth heal these wounds? There is no simple answer. It could be the final act of an extremely compassionate person or a quiet, heartbreaking decision. Perhaps it is both. Rob Reiner's story is a testament to a legacy filled with ideals, compassion, and hidden pain. If you have thoughts on willpower, love, or how legacy can conflict with family, please share them below. And if you want to follow more stories of powerful families, untold secrets, and legacies that continue to resonate, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The spotlight may have faded, but the real end never comes. King Charles was briefly hospitalized today. But as night fell, Buckingham Palace reopened as if nothing unusual had happened. Inside those ancient walls, the atmosphere is said to be under unprecedented pressure. It's not just concerns about the king's health, but also a silently rising tide of public opinion. According to sources close to the royal family cited by the British media, questions have recently arisen about how the royal family is handling this crisis. The roles, responsibilities, and presence of senior members, especially Queen Camilla, are under more intense public scrutiny than ever before. There have been no official statements, no clear explanations, only speculation, unanswered questions, and a heavy silence enveloping the palace. In these most fragile moments of the monarchy, what is truly happening behind the doors of Buckingham Palace? It all began with an unusually brief statement from the palace. Just 3 sentences, but enough to shatter the calm the royal family had tried to maintain for days. Behind the carefully chosen words lay a palpable sense of unease. King Charles's health, according to the announcement, had entered a new phase. This phrase immediately drew the attention of royal observers. Sources familiar with protocol said this wasn't the usual phrasing used in reassuring medical announcements. In the palace's internal language, it was typically used when the situation became serious and unpredictable. Within minutes, the Buckingham Palace press office received a flurry of calls. Reporters from all over demanded clarification. Was the king's health stable? How was the treatment progressing? But alongside the medical questions, another question quietly spread among the media and the public. During the health alert that was triggered at Balmoral late Tuesday night, Queen Camilla's presence was apparently unnoticed. According to sources cited, she was still at Clarence House. The information that she was taking time to reflect sparked mixed reactions within the royal family. That wording, to many, sounded alien to the language typically used during times of family crisis. Several royal aides, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the atmosphere as an unbelievable reversal of roles. According to them, it was Catherine, the Duchess of Wales, who stood out. She attended briefings, communicated with Duchess Anne, and coordinated with the medical team. Overnight, Catherine was seen as a moral anchor, an unofficial coordinating center amidst widespread anxiety across the country. The images broadcast on television later only fueled the debate. Catherine left Windsor for Balmoral looking calm, but weary. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla was reportedly seen leaving London for an undisclosed location before dawn. On social media, hashtags like "Where is Camilla?" and "Stand with Catherine" quickly trended. Some commentators suggested this was a moment when the Queen's iconic status was called into question. According to inside accounts, what should have been a night focused on medical coordination gradually took on the appearance of a media crisis. Palace staff were reportedly divided into different groups, one coordinating with the offices of Prince William and Catherine, the other trying to contact Queen Camilla's private office, which remained almost completely silent for hours. Even veteran officials expressed bewilderment. One, in an informal exchange with the BBC, said that all scenarios had been prepared, but none for that absence. The British royal family has weathered many storms throughout history thanks to its image of unity. That evening, according to insiders, that illusion seemed to crack. Buckingham Palace was described as being in a state of tension, where everyone was busy but no one was truly in control. Amidst this, Princess Anne quietly arrived at Balmoral, without a motorcade or cameras. Assistants said her appearance helped calm the atmosphere, which had been clouded with anxiety and frustration. This fueled speculation that in recent months, Anne had become the king's most trusted confidant in private matters. The next turning point came a few hours later, when an internal memo circulated among senior officials. The document was printed on the king's letterhead, but according to several sources, it was co-authored by Prince William's team. The brief message read, "Continuity in work and compassion must be maintained." For long-time royals, this was no random wording. It was interpreted as a stark reminder of responsibility and presence at a crucial moment. And remarkably, in all the narratives circulated that night, Queen Camilla's role was hardly mentioned, a silence sufficient to continue stirring debate in British public opinion. That afternoon, the focus of the story gradually shifted. From the king's health, media attention turned to another factor: the Queen's absence. On television channels, clips were repeatedly played side by side for comparison. On one side was the image of Queen Camilla with a radiant smile at previous public events. On the other was Catherine's calm, resolute demeanor in recent days. Commentators pointed out the striking visual contrast. The image of Camilla comforting a nurse during a visit to the oncology department earlier in the year was juxtaposed with her appearance at a polo match a few weeks later. Placing these two moments side by side created a powerful, hard-to-ignore effect, even though each image belonged to completely different contexts. However, the most attention-grabbing information was believed to have come from within the palace. A senior aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, said Queen Camilla did not attend Balmoral, citing what was described as mental exhaustion. According to accounts circulated, she expressed that she was not emotionally ready to be in that space again. These words, when circulated, provoked a strong reaction as the nation watched the king's health unfold. On television, royal historian Dr. Stephen White offered a cautious observation. He recalled that during periods of serious illness in previous monarchs, the image of a close-knit family served to reassure the public. He argued that comparisons were inevitable, and history often remembers who was present during crucial moments. Even veteran reporters began using reserved but rare language when speaking about a sitting queen. Not conclusions, but questions, about distance, about roles, and about presence. Meanwhile, the king remained under close observation, not only by the medical team, but also by close family members, his son, his sister, and Catherine, who was increasingly seen as a steadfast pillar of support. According to close sources, Catherine personally received the morning briefings, ensuring privacy protocols were followed and coordinating closely with Princess Anne. As the medical reports became more serious, Catherine's demeanor was described as less formal and more intimate. An aide whispered that it was care stemming from familial affection, not just duty. Outside Balmoral, crowds began to gather. Flowers and letters were placed thickly before the gates, addressed to the king, and expressing appreciation for Catherine's dedication and composure. A handwritten card was pinned to the fence with the brief inscription, "Your presence is meaningful. As night fell, the balance of public sentiment seemed to tip heavily in favor of those images. Queen Camilla's office later issued only a brief statement, confirming that she was monitoring the situation privately. For many, this statement came too late to quell the heated debate. In the media landscape, the Queen's image was subjected to various interpretations, from a discreet partner to a distant figure. At Balmoral, the lights remained on. Press helicopters circled in the distance. According to sources, Prince William was with his father, engaging in brief but discreet exchanges, away from the cameras. Elsewhere, Queen Camilla was reportedly handling private matters, communicating with her close associates. There was no official confirmation of the content of those exchanges. Near midnight, the atmosphere in the king's private quarters became increasingly tense. For weeks prior, the medical team had been closely monitoring worrying signs. The latest tests confirmed that the king's health was deteriorating faster than anticipated. At 12:47 a.m., a call was made via the emergency hotline. Shortly, a small group of senior aides, doctors, and Prince William were present in the crisis room, the same room used for the nation's most important meetings. Queen Camilla's name was absent from the list of attendees. Her absence was not publicly commented on, but it was noticeable to everyone. Finally, a senior advisor briefly announced that the Queen had decided to remain at Clarence House and sent her regards from afar. The statement was recorded in silence. William nodded. Princess Anne adjusted her coat and prepared to leave, her tension evident. The decisions were then made directly without going through the usual procedures. Doctors confirmed the king's condition had worsened overnight, requiring constant monitoring. Under normal circumstances, the role of coordinating the family affairs would have belonged to the Queen. But this time, it was Catherine who answered the call at 2:10 a.m. She arrived at Balmoral in silence, without entourage, carrying only documents and a remarkably calm demeanor. An aide recounted that when Catherine entered the king's chambers, she took his hand and spoke simple, reassuring words. There was no ceremony, no setup. From that moment, coordination was re-established. Catherine worked directly with the medical team, reviewing instructions and ensuring all procedures were strictly followed. That calmness, according to witnesses, was something the palace hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, William worked in the next room, meticulously drafting updated communication plans for the palace press corps. Every word was carefully considered. It was a difficult balance between reassuring the public and ensuring transparency. No embellishment, no evasion, just maintaining clarity and precision. By dawn, with the support of Princess Anne, order was gradually restored, not through loud pronouncements but through quiet composure and authority. However, outside the ancient stone walls, the narrative in public opinion had begun to shift. While Catherine quietly cared for and assisted in coordination, Queen Camilla's name no longer appeared in internal schedules. The press office confirmed that she had no public duties scheduled that week. This information attracted considerable attention, especially given the continued public concern over the king's health. Interpretations quickly emerged. Some believe it was a withdrawal due to mental pressure. Others see it as a prudent choice, waiting for the situation to become clearer. One source cited indicated that while Catherine shouldered much of the emotional responsibility and presence at Balmoral, the Queen's private office did not send any staff there. This void, according to many observers, created a stark contrast. Catherine appeared frequently, simply and unpretentiously, while the Queen was almost completely absent from key spaces. By midday, British and international media were abuzz with commentary. Many royal experts considered this one of the first serious challenges for the Charles dynasty, as the king faced a health crisis without the Queen's public presence. Some foreign newspapers even used symbolic headlines to describe the contrast unfolding at Balmoral. Internally, William and Princess Anne had a private meeting with the king's personal physician. The diagnosis was described as unfavorable. Charles remained conscious but weakened and requested a temporary suspension of all official duties. William was tasked with overseeing operations and communications, a phrase later confirmed to have been chosen by the king himself. For the first time, the prince assumed a practical coordinating role at the highest level. Princess Anne, with her familiar pragmatic demeanor, is said to have encouraged William to focus on continuity and stability. In this context, the Queen's continued silence became a subject of much discussion. According to some sources, she had instructed her team to refrain from public statements, hoping to avoid further instability. However, in the media landscape, this silence led to conflicting interpretations. Television commentators scrutinized every detail, questioning her role and presence during these crucial moments. Some argue that what the public perceived was not just a physical absence, but a symbolic void. That evening, Balmoral Gate was packed with people. Locals, tourists, and royal supporters gathered under the gray sky, carrying candles, flowers, and short messages. Many came for the king, but there were also expressions of appreciation for Catherine, who was seen as keeping the machinery running in silence. Catherine briefly stepped out to greet the crowd. There was no speech, just a gentle wave and a few brief reassurances transmitted through the news agencies. The king was resting and being cared for. That simplicity quickly spread. The next morning, many British front pages featured her image with headlines emphasizing her quiet sense of responsibility. In contrast, images of Queen Camilla appeared less frequently, mostly in behind-the-scenes analyses. Polls and commentary suggest that support for her is under pressure, even among groups previously quite reserved with criticism. Inside the Balmoral, the atmosphere is described as divided into two rhythms. On one side is the steady coordination led by William, Anne, and Catherine. On the other is the quietude in the spaces associated with the Queen, where her absence becomes more noticeable over time. By the third night, the palace corridors no longer bear the initial chaos. Instead, there is a sense of purposeful operation. What began as an emergency response has gradually formed a temporary transitional mechanism. King Charles is in his private chambers, frail but lucid. William presides over daily briefings, reviews medical reports, approves communiques, and directly oversees crisis communications. Princess Anne stands beside him, adding legitimacy and experience. Catherine continued to play a connecting role, bringing a sense of calm that many felt the palace had lacked for a long time. Meanwhile, in London, Queen Camilla has virtually disappeared from public view. Her office has declined interviews and canceled scheduled appointments, aiming to avoid escalating controversy. However, each such decision only fuels further questions, particularly after reports emerged that some internal meetings did not take place. The meeting concerning King Charles's health sparked a strong reaction. A segment of the public, already tense and anxious, began questioning the royal family's handling of the crisis. Some newspaper headlines frankly reflected this sentiment, with symbolic questions such as, "Britain is asking, where is the Queen at this moment?" The consequences were almost immediate within the palace. According to sources, several aides who had previously worked closely with Queen Camilla's office began adjusting their working methods, shifting the focus of coordination to Prince William. Some offered to report directly to him. Others proactively shared information with higher-ranking advisors. In this context, loyalty was understood as a way to mitigate risk and ensure continuity. One insider described this shift with cautious but clear words. When one role fades, another naturally emerges. It wasn't an open power struggle, but a symbolic turning point in the way things were being conducted. The highlight came when the Privy Council met online on Friday of the same week. Traditionally, the Queen attended in a ceremonial supportive role. This time, the image of Catherine sitting next to William on video captured attention. In less than half an hour, a picture of the monarchy's stability was conveyed not through ceremony or decree, but through calm presence and practical competence. William played a clear coordinating role. Catherine maintained a composed demeanor. Together, they created a sense of certainty at a time when the center of power in the kingdom was under test. According to some sources, Queen Camilla watched the proceedings from afar and was surprised by this image. Personal feelings, however they existed, were no longer as significant in the context of the shifting public opinion. Royal historian Dr. Martin Hale remarked on television that modern transitions rarely occur with solemn ceremony. They happen in trust, he said. When one steps back, another steps up, and the public recognizes that. As candlelight vigils took place across the country to pay tribute to the monarch, some television programs began using symbolic terms for William and Catherine, not as a formal declaration, but as a reflection of collective sentiment. This tone marked a subtle but distinct shift. In just days, the narrative that began with health issues had expanded into a larger discussion of succession and direction. For the first time since Queen Elizabeth's death, many Britons felt they sensed a clearer axis of stability. In that picture, Queen Camilla's public presence was increasingly fading. Her silence, as perceived by the media, is no longer interpreted as private. After nearly a week of absence, reports indicate that the Empress began sending handwritten letters to several close officials and journalists. These messages, according to sources, aim to explain her perspective and role during the recent period of tension. In the aforementioned letters, the Empress is said to portray herself as someone who always defends the stability of the monarchy. Some excerpts circulating show her emphasizing that maintaining distance was to preserve dignity and avoid further disruption. However, within the palace, not everyone agrees that these explanations fully reflect what actually happened. The first leaks reportedly came from those who had worked closely with her. One staff member, concerned by the personal tone in the letters, shared their contents with the press. Some passages describing Catherine as well-intentioned but overstepping boundaries were quickly exploited in a controversial way. By dawn, tabloids were reporting on private letters that the Queen had no intention of publishing. The public reaction was immediate. Television commentary programs questioned the appropriateness of private exchanges at such a sensitive time, while social media expressed support for the figures present at Balmoral. Princess Anne, known for her outspokenness, reportedly remarked in a private conversation that in times of national anxiety, actions speak louder than words. William, according to sources, maintained a calm exterior, but was under immense pressure. The timing of the leaks caused the already stable atmosphere to become tense again. An aide acknowledged that any goodwill that had just been built was at risk of being eroded. It was Catherine herself who reportedly suggested that the palace not respond directly. Her reasoning was simple. Silence is sometimes the only way to avoid escalation. This restraint, in the public eye, further highlighted the contrast between the two approaches and between the two parallel images existing in the British mind. While Queen Camilla's name constantly appeared in newspapers and on social media, the public's attention was drawn to very different images elsewhere. These included Catherine's quiet visits to local hospitals, her gentle waves to crowds, and her steadfast presence outside Balmoral, a silent symbol of duty and stability. The palace remained closed off, but the aftershocks were real. Updates on the king's health continued to be tightly controlled, appearing only in brief announcements, leaving the public space filled with speculation and conflicting interpretations. Some press commentators suggested internal divisions within the royal family regarding how to handle the media crisis, claims quickly dismissed as mere speculation by close sources. Undeniably, the tense atmosphere had become palpable. Those working in the palace acknowledge, informally, that the pressure of the past few days has been greater than at any other time in recent years. A former official who served Queen Elizabeth II remarked that the unity she had built over 7 decades was the hardest thing to maintain during this fragile period. Amidst the storm, Prince William made a rare public appearance at Windsor. In a brief speech, he thanked the people for their patience and faith, emphasizing the royal family's spirit of collective service. "We will continue to serve together, as the king has always desired," he said, a concluding remark that was heavily analyzed by the media due to his emphasis on collective spirit. At the same time, Queen Camilla appeared at a church service near London. Images of her quickly spread, leading to various interpretations from the public. In the age of social media, even a fleeting moment can be exaggerated, manipulated, and attributed meanings far beyond its original reality. Within Balmoral, according to those close to him, the king still prioritizes stability and harmony above all else. There have been no official statements about internal disagreements, only a consistent desire to keep the royal family from becoming a divisive symbol in the public eye. Historian Simon Drew remarked on a late-night radio program, "In moments like these, the question isn't about titles or power, but about who can bring a sense of calm and grace when the entire kingdom is in turmoil. And it is in this silence, these small gestures, these consistent daily actions, that the public is drawing its own conclusions about the future of the British royal family." At around 7 p.m. London time, a special broadcast was aired across the United Kingdom. Many families turned on their televisions, curtains were drawn, and living rooms fell silent. When the image of King Charles III appeared on the screen, frail but composed, the entire nation seemed to hold its breath. His voice was low and slow as he began to speak. The king acknowledged that his health was facing challenges, but stressed that it was not just a personal matter. He spoke of responsibility, of service, and of the fragility of leadership in difficult times. For many viewers, this was not simply a health update, but a deeply reflective speech about the future. In his address, the king recalled the example of service of the late Queen Elizabeth II and the values she left behind. In a moment that particularly caught the attention of observers, he offered words of appreciation to the Princess of Wales, praising her spirit, compassion, and dedication over the past period. This remark was immediately interpreted by the media as a sign of the increasingly prominent role of the next generation in royal life. The program continued for a few more minutes, but the emotional impact extended far beyond the broadcast time. As the king spoke of the Prince of Wales and his belief in his ability to shoulder greater responsibilities in the future, many viewers clearly felt the message of continuity. He emphasized that the monarchy is not based solely on bloodline, but also on service, compassion, and public trust. As the screen dimmed, there was no official announcement regarding a change in roles or power structures. However, the speech sparked much speculation and commentary, both in the media and among the public, about a carefully orchestrated transition within the royal family. Outside Buckingham Palace, some citizens gathered in silence, lighting candles and expressing their support for the king and his family. These were not organized reactions, but spontaneous expressions of emotion in response to what many perceived as a historic moment. As for Queen Camilla, no official statement or images were released that evening. This silence, as is typical of the royal family, led to various interpretations from the public and commentators. However, there was no confirmation from the palace regarding these speculations. What was clear after the broadcast was not an end, but a milestone. This moment led many to believe that the British royal family was entering a new phase, where trust, public image, and public perception would be just as important as any formal ceremony. In the following days, royal observers began whispering about the quiet changes behind the palace doors. Some unofficial sources suggested that senior courtiers were redistributing personnel, with several key figures moving from Clarence House to work more closely with the Kensington team. There was no public confirmation, but many described this as a sign of a cautious internal adjustment. On BBC One, a royal historian stated that the British monarchy was entering a natural transition period, where future leaders were beginning to take on more prominent public roles. This remark was quickly widely quoted, reflecting how the media was interpreting recent developments. The following morning, the Duchess of Wales appeared at Buckingham Palace for a meeting with Commonwealth youth ambassadors. The event had been scheduled beforehand, but its timing gave it special symbolic significance. In front of the cameras, Catherine maintained her usual composed demeanor, thanking the press and politely declining to comment on the king's health. However, her presence attracted considerable attention. When a reporter asked if she wanted to send a message to the king, Catherine paused briefly before gently replying, "We are all praying for him, and will continue to do so in keeping with the values he has always upheld." This brief statement was quickly replayed on most major media outlets, widely interpreted as a reassuring message. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla did not appear in public at several planned events, with an official announcement stating she needed private time. This absence, as is common in the royal family, led to various interpretations from the press and the public, although there was no confirmation from the palace regarding the reason or its underlying significance. According to palace sources cited by the media, the Duchess of Wales continues to assist with daily affairs, coordinating with Prince William and Princess Anne in understanding the situation. These details are recounted cautiously, emphasizing teamwork rather than individual roles. By the end of the week, official photographs were released that garnered significant attention. In them, King Charles sits next to Catherine, with Prince William standing behind. The caption simply emphasizes continuation and concern, without any statement about a change in roles or position. However, this visual composition became the subject of heated analysis, with many suggesting it reflected the royal family's desire to convey a message of stability during a sensitive period. Following the king's emotional speech, the shift in the royal family's media tone and public image became more apparent. Catherine appeared more frequently in diplomatic activities, maintaining a simple and consistent style. A portrait published a few days later showed her in elegant attire, accompanied by a caption emphasizing her spirit of service and responsibility. It wasn't yet an official title or affirmation, but for many who follow the royal family, those details were enough to show one thing. In times of challenge, public image and trust are increasingly converging around faces that represent continuity. Crowds began to gather. Every morning, outside Kensington Palace, people left cards with the simple message, "Our future queen." Across the country, the story spread. Television presenters praised Catherine's composure and grace, describing her as a bridge between generations within the royal family. Several foreign delegations and representatives, according to British media reports, also began directing questions toward her office, citing the ongoing transition and internal coordination processes. The order of influence appeared to be shifting. Prince William chaired emergency meetings at the king's residence. Catherine took over and oversaw several humanitarian programs previously associated with Queen Elizabeth's symbolic role. There was no official announcement, but the monarchy was believed to have quietly adjusted to ensure continuity. On another front, Queen Camilla's absence became more apparent. According to press reports, She retreated to her private estate in Wiltshire, once described as a familiar retreat. Only a handful of close staff remained. Those who rarely visited described a quiet atmosphere, with old portraits and unopened letters. Every detail was reported cautiously by the media without official confirmation from the palace. Newspaper headlines began to juxtapose two images, one of a person regularly appearing in service and another who chose privacy during a sensitive period. Public opinion, according to many surveys, gradually leaned towards stability and consistency. Meanwhile, the king, despite his failing health, remained lucid and was said to find solace in the family's unity. According to an account quoted from Princess Anne in a private conversation, the king emphasized his wish for Catherine to always maintain her identity, not allowing her public role to diminish her true self. Those words were seen as the quiet reflection of a father rather than a political declaration. As autumn gradually enveloped England, the transformation within the royal family unfolded not through decrees or grand ceremonies, but through everyday images and actions. One figure withdrew from the spotlight, another stepped up with familiar composure. One morning, Catherine appeared with William and their children. No elaborate ceremony, no ostentation. Only sunlight, piercing through the gray clouds. When asked about the king's health, she smiled and said, "He is resting, and we will continue our journey together." That statement was replayed on many television channels as a gentle conclusion to a tumultuous chapter. Camilla's name gradually faded from public schedules, while Catherine appeared more and more frequently in representative activities. What began with whispers ended with relative public consensus. As Britain moves forward, one thing becomes clear to many who follow the royal family. Power comes not just from the crown, but from how a person takes on that responsibility long before the official title even appears. If you're interested in royal stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and leave your comments. What do you think truly makes up the crown of the heart? Thank you for your time and for following along with us. Perhaps this is a somewhat unusual, even strange approach to conducting an interview with history. But the era of ambiguity has officially ended. The royal line of succession will no longer be a game of speculation or endless rumors. In an official statement on December 12, 2025, King Charles III made his position clear. The magnificent corridors of Windsor Castle fell into a heavy silence as the king, in an unprecedented move, addressed the nation in person, with family members present in the white drawing room. The theme of that statement was the definitive and irreversible end to all claims to the royal line of succession for Prince Harry and his children, Archie and Lilibet, within the framework of the line of succession tied to Windsor. This was not merely a personal decision. It was a constitutional declaration, a clearly defined boundary, both legally and dynastic, with unprecedented precision and firmness. An action designed to end protracted chaos while simultaneously solidifying the foundations for the future of the English monarchy in a turbulent era. Behind Charles stood a gilded statue. The podium was adorned with the royal insignia and 2 Union Jack flags. The stage was solemnly set, as if reserved for history. His words were sharp, clear, and distinctly formal. There was no anger, not a mournful tone, but a calm, restrained one. He spoke not as a father, but as a king commemorating his deceased mother. Charles began by mentioning her supposed private instructions, the values she held, and the demands placed upon a modern monarchy. He stated that he had carefully considered his actions to be transparent and responsible, in accordance with his conscience and his role as head of the royal family. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then the moment of truth arrived. The Duke of Sussex and his children, are reportedly no longer seen within the framework of the succession or the rituals associated with the Windsor royal estate and traditions. This directional decision, as it is recounted, comes just weeks after Charles reportedly learned of a specific clause in Queen Elizabeth II's handwritten will, drafted in March 2022, about 6 months before her death. That clause, according to unofficial sources, set a condition relating to an estimated $20 million inheritance for Harry, aiming to bind him and his children to the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth through presence and service. Initially, some insiders believed this was the Queen's final conciliatory gesture, an attempt to mend a fractured dynasty. But over time, it has highlighted old contradictions. The gap between duty and personal choice is seen as irreconcilable. Sources close to the palace say that, after days of legal review and high-level family discussions, including tense private meetings involving Charles, Princess Anne, and Prince William, the aforementioned clause will not be implemented. It will be preserved as part of historical documentation, not as a foundation for the future of the royal family. Charles is said to have respected his mother's wishes, but also made his own choice. He emphasized that his responsibility was not to try to rebuild what was irreparable, but to preserve values that were deemed to be enduring. A private family meeting is believed to have been held in Buckingham Palace's Scarlet Drawing Room on December 10, 2025. Those in attendance included Prince William and Princess Catherine, Princess Anne, and Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence, Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, Lady Louise Windsor, James Earl of Wessex, and Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Harry and Meghan Markle were reportedly absent. Witnesses described a solemn but decisive atmosphere. Beneath a portrait of Queen Victoria, Charles reportedly declared that matters of succession, inheritance, and royal guardianship would be determined by legal documents, not just by tradition. A long-standing unwritten rule in this view was being transformed into clear law. Princess Anne reportedly displayed a rare firmness. Prince William, according to accounts, emotionally stated that it was time to make a decision. However, the overall sentiment was not one of retaliation. Lady Louise reportedly broke down in tears after the meeting and told staff that it was a matter of responsibility, not revenge. For decades, the public has often confused royal inheritance with wealth, palaces, and jewels. But the message Charles emphasized was different. Inheriting the legacy of the crown means serving, protecting, and preserving it, to pass it on to future generations, not to possess it. The monarchy's assets, often estimated at very large scales, including the Crown Estate, the Duchy of Lancaster, Sandringham, Balmoral, and the royal collection in this view, are tied to public duty rather than personal gain. Title categories are expected to be clearly defined, with only direct heirs and those performing royal duties able to hold constitutional titles, such as Prince of Wales or Duke of Edinburgh. The Duke of Sussex and his children, according to the scenario described, would not fall within that framework. This includes access to property, historical artifacts, royal patronage, and cultural institutions, which were previously reserved only for members serving in the royal service. Some new roles are believed to have been assigned, such as Lady Louise taking on the responsibility of guardianship of the Royal Art Archives. Symbolic funds may remain, but key financial instruments, including resources related to the legacy, are seen as being outside the reach of Harry, Meghan, and their family. Charles concluded with a definitive statement. The royal family is not a brand, but a burden of responsibility. There has been no official response from Harry or Meghan. Legal representatives declined to comment, while sources in the U.S. have offered only indirect insights into their sentiments. For Charles, as the story is told, the issue is not about removing anyone from the family, but about separating private life and personal pain from the official duties of an institution that has existed for centuries. The king concluded his statement with a promise. He said that by January 2026, the royal family would make an official announcement. A succession document would be published specifying those recognized as heirs to traditional titles, those responsible for the care of historical properties, along with their accompanying responsibilities, duties, and preservation. Described as the first document of its kind in British history, it would systematize rules that have been quietly passed down from monarch to monarch. For many observers, this meant that the notion that royal succession could be activated at will had come to an end. As the repercussions of the event subsided, attention shifted to the Prince and Princess of Wales. Following the announcement, William and Catherine were not only seen as nominal heirs, but also assumed more active roles in how the royal family operated. The concept of the monarchy's guardian thus seemed to be redefined. In the days that followed, William reportedly quietly took on additional internal responsibilities, including overseeing educational programs within the Duchy of Cornwall. Catherine, meanwhile, was said to have held private meetings with those in charge of the Royal Museum, particularly the collection of ceremonial attire, now officially under her patronage. But beyond the rituals and symbolism, these moves carried a deeper meaning. Their continued presence sent a clear message: continuity through quality. When some chose to leave, they stayed. When others abandoned their duties, they took on the responsibility. A senior aide once told the Telegraph, "William and Catherine stayed and continued to serve. That's what the monarchy values now. Not just blood, but devotion." Their marriage was once lauded as a modern icon. Under constant public pressure, tabloid scrutiny, and family tensions, the relationship is said to have weathered many trials. From drama, it gradually became something more enduring, a fortress of duty and steadfastness. Unlike the Sussexes' departure from royal life, often associated with confrontation and public exposure, Wales is seen as having chosen a path of restraint and perseverance. Those close to them recount that during Catherine's difficult health period in 2025, William rarely appeared in public without special arrangements. According to later reports, her illness was confirmed to be cancer, and William is said to have accompanied his wife to private medical appointments, demonstrating unwavering support even in the most challenging circumstances. This unity during a turbulent time earned him admiration not only from the public, but also from King Charles himself. It is no coincidence that the draft charter of royal succession, according to sources, listed both William and Catherine not only as heirs to the estate, but also as first-level co-managers of the Royal Parks Commission, the Historic Palaces, the Conservation Fund, and the Commonwealth Education Union, areas previously under the direct supervision of Queen Elizabeth II. This promotion was seen as a sign of a generational shift in how the monarchy understood succession, from a passive inheritance to an active and direct mandate. Many outside the palace often fail to realize that becoming heir to the throne is more than just waving from a balcony or attending ribbon-cutting ceremonies. It also means inheriting without possessing, controlling without seizing, and above all, preserving without distorting the legacy. The royal estates, including Sandringham, estimated at $245 million, Balmoral at $160 million, and the duchy's properties generating tens of millions of pounds in revenue annually, are not considered private property in the conventional sense. They are family legacies managed by the royal family, governed by rules that have existed for centuries, and are increasingly subject to new guidelines systematized under Charles's reign. William's greatest challenge is not to be king, a senior royal legal advisor once remarked, to be the guardian of 1,000 years of history. Therefore, the updated charter is believed to have introduced the concept of royal custodians, a position separate from purely ceremonial duties. This role applied to those entrusted with protecting royal residences and antiquities, overseeing art, coins, royal manuscripts, and approving the commercial use of royal property for charitable purposes. According to the description, this is not a title of personal choice. It is appointed, evaluated, and overseen through annual performance reviews by the newly established Royal Heritage Audit Council, ensuring accountability at all levels. Perhaps the most noticeable shift in tone did not come from Charles's decree itself, but from a private, non-public seminar at St. George's House, Windsor, that took place 2 days later. The topic revolved around the responsibilities of the heirs in the modern monarchy. Attendees reportedly included Prince George, Princess Charlotte, their governesses, and Lady Louise Windsor, now head of the Royal Art Archives. James, Earl of Wessex, is also believed to have received his first introduction to his future role, along with Princess Anne's children as they grew older. Palace aides noted that this was the first time the younger generation of the royal family had been formally introduced to the structure, laws, and moral responsibilities associated with their future roles. It was not just about the crown and the palace, but also about heritage, trust, and political neutrality. Prince George, as it is said, paid particular attention and posed a thought-provoking question: what will happen to the crown if no one wants to serve it anymore? A question that had both worried and inspired respect in his great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. Although William was considered the future monarch, Catherine's role became increasingly prominent in a quiet but enduring way. She is believed to have gradually taken on responsibilities previously associated with the legacy overseen by Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. Catherine was involved in directing the digitization of archival documents, coordinating the selection of curators for royal exhibitions, and is thought to have played a pioneering role in developing a curriculum on royal ethics for Commonwealth schools. All of this happened discreetly, without fanfare. Within the palace, Catherine was referred to by a symbolic nickname, the Keeper of the Pearls, not only preserving history, but also selecting, arranging, and safeguarding it for the future. One staff member remarked, "She absorbs the past, puts it in order, and then transforms it into a living legacy." This influence is expected to be most evident in the planned Coronation Heritage Exhibition in 2026, where Catherine is reportedly working with collaborators to design a project honoring the lives and sacrifices of queens and princesses across generations. According to royal sources, the exhibition is expected to dedicate spaces to Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Diana, and Queen Camilla, a bold choice aimed at connecting different generations and layers of royal history. Of course, not all reactions have been supportive. Zara Tindall, daughter of Princess Anne, is said to have shared with a friend, "Now, it's not just about bloodline, it's about loyalty. That's something new, and not everyone can pass that test." Even within the royal family, tensions reportedly simmered over who would occupy the real power of oversight and who would retain a purely ceremonial role. However, Catherine's approach seemed unwavering. At a small charity event in Yorkshire, just a day after the decree was announced, when asked if the pressure was too great, she reportedly replied, "The pressure reminds you that this is not something you own, but something you are responsible for protecting." This statement was widely interpreted as reflecting her calm and steadfastness amidst the emotional and political turmoil engulfing the family. Following King Charles's announcement, two other figures also drew attention, not for their ostentatious display, but for their quiet strength: Princess Anne and Prince Edward. While public attention is often swept up in sensational news and controversy, the core machinery of the monarchy for decades is said to have relied heavily on the dedication of Anne and Edward. In this new era, as Charles formalized the rules of succession and clarified the concept of inheritance, their roles became even more clearly defined. According to guiding documents, Anne, Edward, and their family are credited as the official stewards of the Windsor estate, emphasizing that the institution is larger than any individual. At a family council meeting in December, Charles is said to have stated that the monarchy could not stand without those willing to keep it upright, persistently, humbly, and resolutely. At 75, Princess Anne, often cited as the most hard-working member of the royal family, has undertaken over 20,000 duties throughout her lifetime. For the first time, that legacy is believed to be being formally documented. Under the Charter of Royal Succession, Anne was granted the long-term authority to manage the Royal Military Archives, the body responsible for overseeing family rituals across generations and related ceremonial standards. In addition, she serves as a senior advisor on the Royal Memorials Commission, responsible for preserving the national memory of war, military service, and sacrifice. But beyond her titles, Anne's voice is seen as central to shaping the concept of inclusion and boundaries within the modern monarchy. Sources indicate that she advised Charles in early November 2025 that further waiting for reconciliation might no longer be feasible, and that such a delay would only lead to erosion. This stance is seen as the foundation for a new royal doctrine. Exclusion, if necessary, is not necessarily cruelty, but sometimes a form of protection, something often overlooked in sensational media narratives. Prince Edward, now the Duke of Edinburgh, is widely seen as a key figure in maintaining internal stability within the royal family. At 61, he is considered to have become one of the most influential figures in the daily workings of the palace. Edward currently heads the Royal Heritage Infrastructure, a management body responsible for maintaining and modernizing royal residences not open to the public. This includes private holiday homes, enclosed parks, and overseeing the logistics for royal ceremonies and state receptions, as well as upgrading the environment of heritage-listed properties, including Balmoral and several other historic residences. Most iconic is his oversight role over Windsor Castle, which was restored after a devastating fire more than 3 decades ago. According to staff, Edward's work reflected the spirit of the monarchy in its current phase, rebuilding, consolidating, and strengthening. A senior aide once remarked that Edward didn't pursue sensational headlines, but without his quiet presence, the royal apparatus would be far more fragile. The Charter of Royal Succession, according to the drafts mentioned, also introduced a new concept of hereditary heirs, individuals not in the direct line of succession, but still bearing specific responsibilities for individual royal properties and collections. Each role was clearly defined in terms of scope and obligations. Lady Louise Windsor, 22, is believed to have been appointed to head a section of the Royal Art Archives, overseeing the digitization and management of over 700 works, including sketches, paintings, and historical manuscripts of Windsor. Under Catherine's guidance, she is expected to contribute to the organization of public exhibitions in the coming years, tentatively starting in 2027. James, Earl of Wessex, 17, is said to have begun his Royal Heritage Scholarship program this year, closely following palace logistics, estate management, and ceremonial planning. He is expected to take on several ceremonial roles in state events before the age of 21. Peter Phillips is mentioned as a coordinator and non-political ambassador for a Commonwealth Business and Charity Alliance, while Zara Tindall is expected to lead a fund focused on preserving royal equestrian culture and sport. This hierarchical arrangement is seen by observers as a way to ensure transparency and tangible contributions. Logically, those connected to the royal heritage are expected to actively serve its continuation. It is no coincidence that Princess Anne and Prince Edward are often seen standing near King Charles, both symbolically and in their roles, during important moments. They are not merely ceremonial figures, but rather testaments to the fact that a monarchy, built on a foundation of quiet steadfastness, can still function effectively. This is a lesson beyond headlines, a reminder that when fulfilled completely, duty can overcome notoriety, public scrutiny, and the vicissitudes of history. According to accounts, King Charles once acknowledged that William would wear the crown, but Anne and Edward were the ones who carried the memory and became the backbone of the institution. Without them, things would hardly stand. Meanwhile, on the evening of December 12, 2025, while Buckingham Palace shone brightly with the festive atmosphere of the royal Christmas dinner, Montecito was described as unusually quiet. There has been no official statement from Prince Harry or Meghan Markle. No social media posts, no podcasts, and no trailers for any media projects. Beneath the peaceful surface of California, according to sources, lies a tense period. Harry and his 2 children being excluded from current and future inheritance rights under the Royal Charter is seen not merely as an administrative procedure, but as a symbolic severance. A close friend of Harry reportedly said they thought this would never happen, but now that it has, there is no turning back. In terms attributed to King Charles, this is seen as a final administrative review, as well as an emotional separation. Since stepping down from royal duties in early 2020, Harry and Meghan are believed to have maintained what some palace aides have called strategic ambiguity, simultaneously expressing personal hurt in interviews while continuing to associate themselves with royal titles, maintaining distance while simultaneously seeking protection and validation. That tension, according to many observers, had been tolerated by the palace for a long time. However, when information about a conditional inheritance clause of Queen Elizabeth II, with a financial provision tied to obligations of service and connection, was brought to light, it became a factor that made the differences no longer concealable. One royal advisor remarked that the clause was written with much hope, but in the current context, it was like landing on a burning house. According to internal sources, Charles deliberately did not activate the clause, arguing that doing so could reopen doors that the royal family believed needed to be closed. The final legal language enshrined in the charter rendered the related rights invalid, based on the argument of failing to meet the established standards of responsibility and ethical governance. According to sources close to the legal community, in a private letter dated December 8th, formally confirmed by legal advisory groups, King Charles informed Prince Harry that he would no longer be eligible to claim or access any financial resources related to assets under the royal family's management. The letter also stated that Harry's children would not be eligible for guardianship, inheritance rights, or access to inherited royal assets. Legally speaking, all previous official inheritance records are believed to have been cancelled and updated. According to these sources, this means Archie and Lilibet will not be recognized as royal heirs in the legal sense, although they may still maintain polite forms of address when living abroad. The letter, reportedly drafted by Sir Hugo Graston, Chief Justice of the Royal Courts, and signed by Princess Anne, with the consent of Prince William, is seen as a legal step to strengthen intergenerational unity within the royal family. According to insiders, the family spent years seeking reconciliation with Harry. However, that period gradually shifted from silence to avoidance and finally to open defiance. This final decision, according to sources, was considered inevitable, even though Harry and Meghan reportedly did not participate in the final dialogue process. Unofficial responses from Los Angeles suggest Meghan was furious, viewing the exclusion as retaliation and an erasure. Harry, while reportedly deeply saddened, has not ruled out considering legal action, particularly concerning the symbolic rights of his children. His legal team, according to sources, is considering defenses based on the International Inheritance Framework. Legal experts believe that King Charles's actions, if described accurately, fall within the scope of sovereign immunity. However, they also emphasize that the emotional and family consequences are profound. Meghan is said to have shared with friends that the royal family is punishing her children for her independent choices. Meanwhile, Harry is described as going through a prolonged period of grief, not only because of past personal losses, but also because of a feeling of alienation from his homeland. According to sources, he has canceled several planned performances in New York. For Meghan, this definitive exclusion is believed to have confirmed her long-held belief that the monarchy will never truly encompass her children. Public opinion polls conducted by YouGov a day after the news broke showed that around 57% of Britons supported stripping Harry's family of their royal inheritance rights. Around 24% opposed it, arguing that the decision was too harsh or unnecessary, while the remaining 19% were undecided, with many calling for a more transparent royal succession map. In response to this mixed reaction, King Charles reportedly ordered the publication of the royal succession charter to the public on January 1, 2026. This is seen as a New Year's declaration revolving around the concepts of lineage, responsibility, and preservation. For the first time, the British public will have written access to information about who holds ownership, who has guardianship, who is excluded, and why. Beyond the paperwork, the most sensitive issue is the legitimacy of bloodline. Some rumors within the palace suggest that Princess Anne insisted on the inclusion of DNA verification clauses not as a public attack, but as a measure of private protection. While never officially confirmed, the existence of these clauses, according to observers, reflects a growing caution regarding external claims concerning royal succession. Some historians argue that royal legacy is not based solely on bloodline, but also on conduct and responsibility, and King Charles, in that view, is believed to have fully embraced this doctrine. From 2020 to 2025, the global public witnessed Harry and Meghan constantly oscillating between insider and outsider roles, between personal grievances and media glamour. Now, according to sources, that door has closed. No more last chances, no more gray areas, no more prolonged waiting. According to King Charles's alleged statements during family meetings, the council made a decisive decision. The era of divided loyalty was over, and the royal family had to choose its future. A future that, he argued, could no longer be dominated by conflicting legacies spanning generations. The concept of royal succession, once envisioned by the public as diamonds, gilded carriages, vast estates, and untouchable wealth, was said to have been redefined. In his end-of-year speech in 2025 and in the forthcoming Charter of Royal Succession, King Charles is quoted as saying, "Inheritance is not a reward. It is the burden of memory, a covenant of protection, and a legacy to be cultivated every day." By publicly challenging centuries-old notions, Charles not only closed the debate surrounding Harry's rights, but also opened a new chapter in how the monarchy interprets and manages its cultural and intellectual assets. The estimated total value of royal holdings is said to exceed $18.3 billion, according to 2025 financial reports. However, King Charles has clarified that none of it is owned in the way the public typically imagines. Royal inheritance is now divided into 4 main groups, each governed by a combination of tradition, fiduciary mechanisms, and legal texts. The royal estate, valued at approximately $16.5 billion, comprises urban, rural, agricultural, coastal, and commercial properties managed by an independent council, with profits going to the national treasury and not subject to individual inheritance. According to sources, the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall generate a combined income of approximately $1.44 billion, but this income is only transferred to recognized royal heirs who are actively performing public duties. Individuals excluded from this framework, such as Harry, are currently legally restricted from accessing these revenues. Private properties such as Sandringham and Balmoral, with an estimated total value of around $320 million, are privately owned by the monarch, but are protected under royal succession law. Access is granted only to family members serving within the official framework of the royal family, without exception. The titles associated with managing these sites now come with specific legal obligations regarding preservation, as well as responsibilities for overseeing iconic collections, including royal artifacts, jewelry, artwork, manuscripts, and ceremonial attire, all managed according to legal regulations. According to relevant documents, the Royal Estate Management Council currently includes Princess Catherine and Princess Anne. The use of any estate items requires the Council's approval and is tied to official public royal functions. In other words, no individual automatically inherits the crown or property in the conventional sense. Authority is granted only on the basis of the estate, with the purpose of protecting and maintaining it. The language of the Charter has reshaped the role of royal descendants in this way. The current model no longer views inheritance as a privilege, but rather as guardianship as a long-term commitment. Individuals named in the official guardianship register, including William, Catherine, Anne, Edward, Lady Louise, and several others, are not simply permitted to reside in royal residences or access royal property. They are also bound by contractual terms, requiring them to maintain conservation work, prepare budgets, submit annual performance reports, meet engagement and service standards, and undergo periodic audits relating to the use of inherited property, artwork, estates, and ceremonial attire. According to the plan, Lady Louise is expected to plan an annual exhibition for the Royal Art Archive. Meanwhile, James, Earl of Wessex, is expected to undergo intensive training in the processes of managing state-owned land. A senior royal aide commented that this is a sign of a functioning dynasty where romanticism has been replaced by responsibility. Many outside the palace have previously believed that Prince Harry will continue to hold rights to royal property, purely based on bloodline. However, King Charles is said to have made it clear that while lineage may confer identity, it is conduct and commitment that ultimately determine legacy. With the new charter, the era of tacit agreements and vague royal concepts is seen as over. Rights are no longer implicit, but must be established in writing. According to the charter, several individuals are listed as no longer within the scope of royal inheritance. This list, as the document states, includes Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, along with Archie and Lilibet Mountbatten Windsor. The charter states that failure to maintain intergenerational guardianship obligations would result in legal consequences in which the individuals involved would not be recognized as heirs to the title, fiduciary, or tradition under applicable regulations, including Sovereign Heritage Protocol 82. The document also prohibits the commercialization or use of royal imagery, symbols, traditions, and language for branding or future media projects. For the first time in modern royal history, the Royal Succession Charter is described as not relying on vague assumptions or precedents, but clearly in writing, defining who assumes which responsibilities and under what specific conditions. At the heart of this structure is Prince William, the heir to the throne. His succession is described as constitutional and uncontroversial. The Charter emphasizes that this position is not based solely on inheritance, but is built on continuity, duty, and trust, bestowed by both the royal family and the relevant institutions. Next is Prince George, designated as the future heir to the title of Duke of Cornwall, a role he is expected to officially assume upon reaching the age of 18. This inheritance comes with specific conditions. The Charter requires long-term service, a commitment to official residence, and clear preparation for public responsibilities. The ducal title is not seen as a financial privilege, but rather as an act of estate intended to fund royal duties and national engagement. The document also introduces a notable generational transition with the appointment of Princess Charlotte as guardian of the royal cultural heritage. Her responsibilities included overseeing royal music, ceremonial attire, educational patronage, and the preservation of cultural traditions, elements considered to shape the monarchy's soft power. This reflected the view that cultural preservation was as important as political continuity. Lady Louise Windsor was previously designated as the guardian of the ceremonial heritage, tasked with managing the royal archives, organizing exhibitions, and performing related rituals. This role reflects the Charter's emphasis on knowledge, prudence, and continuity, rather than prominence or formal status. The Charter also names James, Earl of Wessex, as being considered for a successor role in the Commonwealth Trust, with periodic assessments based on performance, engagement, and understanding of the Commonwealth's evolving role in the royal family's global heritage. In addition to these formal designations, the Charter acknowledges that Duchess Anne's grandchildren are being considered for ceremonial and managerial roles related to the preservation of equestrian heritage, agricultural management, and royal traditions connected to rural life. Although not directly related to succession or property, these roles are considered essential to maintaining the historical link between the monarchy and the land. One contributor summarized the philosophy behind these decisions in a concise sentence: absolute clarity. It's not how you are born, but how you appear, serve, and remain. In that way, the Charter of Royal Succession is seen as a document redefining the meaning of succession in the modern era. In the modern Windsor family, succession is no longer guaranteed by birth alone. It is no longer a natural privilege, but a responsibility bestowed, continuously evaluated, and if necessary, revoked. What is happening is not a weakening of the monarchy after scandal, but a consolidation of power through transparency and discipline. This dynasty no longer operates on myth or arbitrariness. It is a clearly structured institution where privilege exists only when duty is fulfilled. With the 2025 Royal Succession Charter, King Charles has taken an unprecedented step, completely ending the gray area of ambiguity. He affirms that the future of the crown lies not in succession, but in responsibility. And that responsibility now has specific, non-negotiable provisions. The successors of Windsor are no longer determined simply by bloodline, but by conduct, dedication, and the ability to carry out the long-term responsibility. Prince William will inherit the throne constitutionally and without dispute, not only because of his bloodline, but because of the continuity and trust he has built. Prince George, upon reaching 18, will take over the Duchy of Cornwall provided he meets all requirements for service and residence, viewing it as an estate operating in the national interest, not a source of personal privilege. Princess Charlotte has been given the role of guardian of the royal cultural heritage, emphasizing that preserving identity, ritual, and soft power is just as important as political succession. Lady Louise Windsor continues her role as guardian of ceremonial heirlooms, a position requiring knowledge, prudence, and perseverance rather than prominence. James, Earl of Wessex, has been designated as the potential heir to the Commonwealth Trust, with the assessment based on performance and actual contribution. Even Princess Anne's grandchildren are only considered for roles related to governance, preservation, and agricultural traditions, silent but essential links in the historical relationship between the monarchy and the land. This charter not only closes Harry's inheritance claims, but also ends the illusion that the royal family is a space to be entered and exited at will. For Meghan, the era of negotiation is over. For Harry, the door is no longer half open. And for their children, the connection to the crown is now a personal symbol, separate from state recognition. A new reality has been established. Each heir must demonstrate their ability to govern, their commitment, and the values of Windsor not through words, but through sustained action. This is the legacy King Charles left, not for the family alone, but for the institution. Not about wealth, but about responsibility. Not about chaos, but about clarity. For the first time in generations, the monarchy no longer relied on loyalty. It demanded it. Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you found the content helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share to support us. Leave a comment below to